Hello guys and girls, welcome to another Photoshop tutorial with PSD Box. My name is Andrei, and in this tutorial I will show you how to get this soft looking effect on your images. A lot of you guys have requested a tutorial about this, and well, I had to make it. I had no other choice. So you can see I have two images here. This is the final result of both of them, and let me show you the original image. For this one on the left this was the original image, and this was the effect that I created for it. And let's see the other one. Original image and after the effect. Okay, so this is the effects that I will show you how to create in this video. A few things before we start. If these images are no longer available, you can use any other image. You can apply this to any other image. You'll have the links on the bottom of the video if you're watching this from my website, or on the video description if you're watching it from YouTube. And what I want to show you is how to work with adjustment layers, because you can see there's only adjustment layers on this layer palette, and the values that these adjustments have are only useful for this image in particular, because each image has its own contrast and its own colors on it, so these values will not work for another image. That's why most of the actions that you download from internet, most of them don't work on your own images, and people wonder why. So in the end, what I want you to learn is how to work with these adjustments and how to judge for yourself how to use them, not to just copy the same values, because that's easy. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so we will work first on this image, and as you can see, as I said, there's only adjustment layers here, and then just a couple of layers here on the top to add this light effect. Okay, and some dust particles here. I'll show you how to do that. So what I will do is I will use the same image, so I'll just copy it. One way of using the same image, if this is no longer available, is just open the PSD file. You can download it from my website. So download this PSD file and do what I'm doing now, which is select the entire canvas with Ctrl-A, and then just create a new document and paste that image, which is this is our original. So I will delete the original background. Okay, delete that. This will be our image. So before you start, you just take a quick look at your image. If you want to use the clone stamp or the hot spot healing brush tool to just fix the portrait if you want to, or fix parts of the background, you can do that. Everything that will enhance your image, you can do it. But let's go to the effects. So what this kind of images have in common is that they have little contrast. They have that sort of a washed look to them. Okay, so you can achieve that using curves, using levels and adjustments like that. So let's add the curves first. You can use levels as well, but I like the curves. And a way of decreasing the contrast, sorry, is to the contrast is simply the difference between the darkest and the brightest part of the image. A way of doing that is to just grab this point and pull it up, and you can see the shadows become brighter, because on the left side of the curves we have the shadows, and if you want to make the highlights darker, you can do the opposite here. But this is not looking nice, because you can see that white doesn't look really nice. So what you can do is go inside the channels here, because we are on RGB mode. If you go to the channels, you will see all the channels that make up our image. This 3 channels combined give us what you see here in the image, the RGB composite. So if you go to the blue channels, we still have the blues and the shadows here, sorry, and the highlights right here on the right. So if you want to do the same, grab the left point here and drag up. What happens is that now on the shadows you increase the amount of blues, so that's why the dark parts become blue, and this white stays pretty much the same because we didn't move it. But some of the midtones here are affected. You can see this big spike here means we have mid-tone, really dark mid-tones, almost shadows. So these are becoming more blue. Okay, if you want to have that split tone effect, you can drag this down. Okay, and you get that split tone effect, but we're not going to do that for this image. Well, you can add a point here and just drag this, keep it on the same line here. So you can see a lot of actions that you download from internet. It's simply a change like this, a simple change on the curves to give that nice split tone effect. Okay, so what I will do is maybe increase this a bit more, like so, and maybe drag this point down a bit. So these are the points that I have. You can try replicate this same curve here if you want to. Now let's go to the greens channel from this drop down list. Let's do the same. Let's add a point here and drag this a bit down like so, and something like that. Okay, to add some magenta. Now you have to know a bit about colors. I have a tutorial about colors. The opposite of green here is magenta. That's why when we drag this down, the image becomes magenta. Okay, and let's go to the red channel now and drag this point a bit to the left, to the right, sorry, which will add more cyan, because the opposite of red is cyan. It's not really difficult to understand this, just watch that other tutorials that I have about color and you will learn. It's really not that difficult to learn the opposite colors. And we're done with this. Okay, so let's see the change. You can see with a simple change on the curves, we got this result here. Let's add another adjustment, which is the gradient map. Now gradient maps are really nice for this kind of effects, because you can split the colors. You can see now the shadows, which is the dark part, the pants, becomes white because we have this white color on the gradient, and the sky, which was white, and this other part here as well is black because we have this black on the highlights. But we're going to change these colors. We don't want to use these ones. So for the shadows, we will use I'll give you the code for the color. I'll just zoom in so you can see it. So we will use this dark blue for the shadows, and for the highlights we will use another tone. Okay, so we will use this orange color. These are opposite colors on the RGB color space. So we will click OK now, and we will change the blend mode to hard light. Now some blend modes, like for example this one, like the hard light, what this does is increases the contrast a lot. Soft light and overlay also do the same, but the contrast is too high, and remember that I said we need to reduce it. So I will reduce the opacity of this layer to 11%, and you will see the result. Especially here on the highlights, they become a bit more yellow. Okay, so we already have that effect almost ready. Let's add now another gradient map. What I will do is just duplicate the top one. So I'll select the top gradient map and press Control Command J to duplicate it. And I want to add more light because it's too dark. So I will use the screen blend mode. The screen blend mode really increases the brightness of the image, but the opacity is too low, so I'll set it to 45%. But the screen, not the color dodge. Okay, so see how now the image is brighter. Oh, let me bring back the image. So see how it added more light, especially here on the face and on the background there. Okay, so now it looks better. The next thing that I added is a color balance. Okay, so the color balance, I usually use it on top of everything to just control. When I like how the image looks and I want to make small changes to some tones, I use a color balance. You can also use selective color, which is even more selective. That's why it's called selective, because you can work with each color separately. Here you will affect the tones. I already have a tutorial about that. So let's start with the shadows. I'll give you the values that I have here. So it's -3, 0, and 77. I will uncheck preserve luminosity, and I'll show you that. I'll show you why after that. For the midtones, I have -9, -4, and 0. And let's go to the highlights. And we have 7, 0, and -47. Okay, so the reason why I unchecked preserve luminosity is because these are really big changes and they will make the image look like this, which is not what I want. Okay, so I just want to change the tones but not affect the luminosity. Okay, so you can see we have even more blue on the shadows. Now keep in mind what I said at the beginning is this values will not work for another image, so you can try them, but most likely they will not work. So what you will need to do is just try this kind of adjustments watching the image, but the same numbers will not work. So now let's add the light effect. I'll create a new layer and let's name it light. It's really easy. We will use the screen blend mode. It's great for this kind of glow lights. And I'll get the brush tool and we'll make this in 2 stages. We will start with a darker color. If you don't know it, with the screen blend mode, the darker the tone, the less visible the effect is. In other words, if you paint with black on a layer which is set to screen, you will have no effect at all. Okay, so we will use this dark red tone. Let's see if it looks nice. I'll increase the flow and the opacity of the brush to 100% and make the brush about 1000 pixels. Okay, softness or hardness set to 0. Make it a bit bigger because I want some of that light to spill on the woman's body. And I want to enhance this sunset here. So I'll click once to see what I get. It looks nice, but it's too red, so I'll change it just a bit. Saturate it and make it just a bit brighter and try again. A couple of clicks and maybe a bit one more a bit higher up because I want some light on the hair as well. And now on the center of the image I want to add more light because now the sun or this light is, we will suppose that the light source is that it's there and we want to make it brighter on the center. So for that I will use a brighter tone of the same color but a bit brighter and more unsaturated, and I will make the brush a bit smaller and just click a couple of times, maybe just a bit bigger. Okay, so this is the effect that I got. You can use a bigger brush if you want to and try with a bigger brush, something like that, but well, it's not looking bad either. Okay, so that's how I created the light. It's really easy. And then I created some dust particles. I created a new layer. I switched the color, the foreground color, to black and pressed Alt and Backspace to fill that layer with black. And you can change the name if you want to. And then I went to Filter, Noise, and Add Noise. I have a tutorial about how to create this kind of effects. I think I used it to create snow or something like that. Make sure the distribution is set, well, the distribution actually, you can set it to uniform or Gaussian, to whatever you want, but make sure you check the monochromatic and use a high amount like 200% or something like that and click OK. And then go back to the filter and open the filter gallery. I'm using Photoshop CS6, but these filters are available in all Photoshop versions. Okay. And well, first make sure you reset the colors to black and white before you go to the filter gallery, because you saw those dots were white. And I'll actually delete this this filter so you can see. And on the artistic folder, select the sponge filter, and you can see what it does to the image. It reduces some of the points, and here you can try the values that you want. One thing though is just set the definition to 25 or to the maximum that you have, and then just try random values here on the brush size and on the smoothness. And once you're done with that, create a new filter layer, from here on the bottom, create this icon, and that will create a new layer. What it does is just duplicates the first layer, and then go to the sketch folder here, okay, and choose the stamp filter, and from here you can control the amount of points that you want. These points will be our dust particles, so we don't want too many of them. So if you increase the smoothness, you can see they become a bit bigger, and some of them will disappear, which is what we want. And when you're happy with the amount that you have, just click OK. I want less of them, something like that. So with these two sliders, you control the amount of points that you have. Make sure you have bigger and smaller points, don't have them all at the same size, something like that, more or less. And let's click OK. Okay, so our layer is ready here. All we need to do in order to get rid of this black background is change the blend mode to screen. You can also use the magic wand tool and select the black and delete it, but that will leave 1 pixel border around this dots here, which is not a big problem because we will use the Gaussian blur and they will not be visible. But anyways, so I set this to screen. Now I'll go to filter, choose blur, and go to Gaussian blur. And the amount of blur that you apply here is really up to you. A realistic blur, depending on the size of the canvas, for this particular image is about 5 pixels or 6. And I'll click OK. So you can see now this dust particles here look a bit, it looks nice. Make sure they don't cover the face or the eyes or something like that. And if you want to color them a bit because they don't really fit the light on the image, you can press Ctrl Command U to load the hue saturation. Check the colorize option, increase the saturation a bit, and set the color to orange and see how they change. You can see how they change color. And if you want to make this add a bit of light, if you increase the lightness, what happens is, let me decrease it a bit because it's too high. What happens is that this background, which was black, now has this yellow color. Okay, and with the screen blend mode, what it does, it casts a bit of light on the image. See that? Maybe I would apply a bit more blur. Okay, so that's how I got this effect. As I said, what you need to learn here is a bit how to use the blend modes and what adjustments could work to get this kind of effect, not the values of these adjustments. So let me show you the original image before and after. I think it's a pretty nice effect. So I like it. Let's go now with the second image. So for the second image, you can see that the layers palette here now we have a lot more adjustments than on the previous one. And that's because that's how the image was, and until I got the effect that I wanted, I just kept adding adjustments. So as you can see, it doesn't work the same for each image. That's the main thing I want you to learn from this tutorial. And let me show you the original image again. This was the original and this is the after. I cropped the image a bit. It was a bit wider, but I cropped it a bit because it looks better to me. So what I'll do is just, as with the other image, copy the canvas and create a new document and paste it here. Okay, what we need to do in this image, this is a bit harder to work with because we have this dress here which has a lot of highlights, and working with highlights with really bright images is really hard. Bright skies, bright clothing like this, it's hard to work with because blend modes, you need to know how to work with the blend modes really well in order to get nice contrast and nice effects on this parts of the image. But you can see we have a pretty high contrast. The background here is, this part here is really dark, the dress is really bright, so we need to make this a bit more uniform. But before I started, I wanted to change a bit the saturation, so I created a hue saturation adjustment, and I increased the saturation to 24. So as you can see, the order is not even the same. I started with the colors, and on the previous image I worked with the contrast. So it's really up to you, as long as you know what you're doing. And this is all a matter of practice, learning how the blend modes work and what you can do to increase contrast or change colors. And the next thing that I added is a gradient map. And again, I'll give you the values of this gradient map. And for the shadows is 105387. So another blue color. For shadows, blue colors usually look nice. And for the highlights, we have this other code. Okay, so we have this yellow tone. Click OK and hide it. And change the blend mode to screen, because I want to add more light on the image. It was too dark. Well, not too dark. The contrast was too big, and well, I wanted to make it just a bit brighter, but it's too strong the effect. So I dropped the opacity to 30%, and you will see that this adjustment makes a big change. And if the dress is too bright, you can use the layer mask and just use a soft brush, okay, and decrease the opacity of the brush to about 20 or 30, and just brush and to take away the effect if you think it's too bright, okay. But in this case it looks nice to me, so I'll leave it as it is. The next thing that I added was a solid color, but before that I want to show you something which for this image is not necessary, but on some cases you can use it. You can use a channel mixer to make the image brighter. If you activate the monochrome option and change the blend mode of this to screen, of this adjustment, you will be able to change the brightness of the tones on the image. Okay, so you can see how the image changes. And you will notice that at some point when you drag this to the left, you will have no more effect. Okay, so this is only useful to brighten up the image. If you drag the sliders too much to the left, you will start to see that it has no effect. And that's because if I change this back to normal, you will see that the image is black. Okay, so what happens is that the black blend mode, the black color, sorry, combined with the screen blend mode has no effect. Okay, that's why when I want to hide black background, I use the screen blend mode, because it makes it disappear. Okay, so that's something you can use on some images, but for this one it's not necessary. Let's move on and add a solid color adjustment. And this is a technique that I use on other tutorials that I have. And I used a color code for this color, which is a really dark blue. Click OK, and you can see how it looks, and change the blend mode now to exclusion. And what this does is reduces the contrast even more. It makes the image look really washed and really, it's not looking bad, but it's not looking too nice either. So but it makes it more even in terms of contrast. Okay, so I have other tutorials, I said, when I worked with this adjustment and with this blend mode. And then let's duplicate this with Control-Command-J to duplicate this adjustment, and let's change the color to this other color. So you can see it's really dark. The exclusion blend mode works with really dark colors. If I use a really bright color, you can see what happens. The darker the color, the less the effect. So I don't want to change the opacity. I want to work with the color intensity instead. Well, I don't know the code that I just modified it, but anyways, it was somewhere here. The exact value doesn't really matter. And then change the blend mode of this. Instead of exclusion, let's change it to screen. Okay, so see how it brightens up the image. It adds even more light. And you can leave the opacity to 100%, but if you use the brighter color, you can drop it a bit. Okay, let's leave it there. So the opacity here depends on how bright the stone was. If it's really bright, you have to decrease the opacity more. If it's really dark, you can leave it at 100%. It's up to you. And well, let's move on and add a levels adjustment now. and you can see that all the contrast that we took away, we have no more highlights and no shadows. You see this gap here, the graphic starts here and we have all this gap, which is the shadows. For a correct exposure, we would have to put this here and this one here, but that's not the objective of this kind of effect. So, but well, it's up to you if you can do it if you want to, but I struggled with all these adjustments to get this low contrast, to get this sort of effect with no contrast. So here I increased this to 1.04 to add more light on the midtones. And for the highlights, I set this to 246. Okay, so let me show you the result, the effect that has this adjustment. So this is what I did with the levels. I just took away some of the highlights here and add a bit more light on the midtones. The obvious questions is, well, how do I know what value to put here? Well, I don't know, it's just practice. I don't know, it's just look at your image and decide what looks good to you. I don't know. It's just training your eyes and a bit of practice, and that's how you can decide the values for your own images. And next I added a color balance. And again, I'll give the values. Let's start again with the shadows. Uncheck preserve luminosity. And I set this to -48, -64. You can see the changes here are a lot higher than on the previous image, and -78. Okay, so you can see the contrast. It adds the contrast back on the image. Well, this was for the shadows. Sorry. Let me do it again. -48, -64, and -78. And for the midtones, the correct values are -70, -42, and -43. And for the highlights, it's -22, -49, and -16. Okay, so you can see how dark the image looks. It really destroys the image. But if you change this to screen, you will see how the image looks now. Okay, so it adds more brightness here, because with all these adjustments, the face and this part here looks really, it doesn't really look nice. At least I didn't like it too much. And I wanted to have a bit more light here on this part, and maybe here on the face and on the hands. Okay, so on this hand here. So that's why I used this adjustment on the screen blend mode, but it's too strong. As you can see, the highlights here are too bright, and also here on the face. So I reduced the opacity to 70%. You can reduce it even more if you want to. Okay, to about 60 or something like that. You can see it makes the image brighter, but we still have this, we don't have that strong contrast on this shadow here, also here on the background. Let me show you again the original so you can see what we've done so far. Okay. So you can see we have more light here on the background and right here. Okay, let's keep going. And the next thing that I added was a gradient map. And the values for the colors are the following. So we have this color for the shadows, and for the highlights, we have this other color code. Okay, so we have this unsaturated orange, and I changed the blend mode of this to soft light, which will increase the contrast again, but it makes the image brighter, and that tone on the shadows, this one, will make all the shadows have this purple tone. But of course the effect is way too strong, so I decreased the opacity of this to 30%. So you can see we have now, you can see that we have now this background a bit colder, because we have that purple tone instead of this green, and a bit more contrast right here and also right here. So it looks different. All these small changes on the image will give you that effect. Okay, so as a final adjustment, I used the vibrance adjustment. If you don't have the vibrance, because the vibrance is an adjustment that is only available since Photoshop CS3, I think, I'm not sure. If you don't have it, you can use hue saturation and just increase the saturation. But I decreased the vibrance to -18 and increased the saturation to 33. Okay, so that's the effect that you get with this vibrance adjustment. And well, that's all it is to it. You can see a bunch of adjustments combined with blend modes, and you get this sort of effect. It's not difficult, but as I said, you need a bit of practice and know how to work with blend modes and think a bit about what you're doing and what you want to achieve before you start working on it. And that's all for today. I hope you liked this tutorial. If you have any suggestions or things like that or comments, you can post them on YouTube or post it on a comment on my website, and I'll try to reply if I can. So well, that's all. Thanks for watching and see you next time.